Okay, what we want to demonstrate here today for you is how we teach the landing, regardless of what the athlete, what in-air technique they use, whether they're sailing or hanging or hitch kicking in the long jump or hopefully just sailing in the last phase of the triple jump. This is the position we want the athlete to get into as they enter the sand, and then these are the kinds of things that we teach. And again, this is most important in terms of injury prevention, but we also can gain a little bit of distance if we do a good job of holding our extension into the sand and then have an active as opposed to a passive landing. And so the first thing we want to point out is that we always want the athlete's toes or feet to be dorsiflex, so toes up. And then the first thing that's going to contact the sand is the heel. Many athletes will plantar flex the foot and land more flat-footed, which will necessitate their heel being much closer to the hips as they enter the sand. So what we want is to have the heels as far away from the center of masses as possible as they enter into the sand. So we're going to have them hold their arms alongside their hips. So again, whatever technique they use in the air, we want them to be in a position where the upper body is vertical, the legs are extended as much as possible with the toes dorsiflexed, and the arms alongside the hips. That's the position we want to get into. Now the problem is that if the athlete lands passively, they're never going to be able to get through on the landing. So they're going to have extension, but they're basically going to land with their hips, their rear end, significantly behind their heels, lose a lot of distance. What most athletes will have a tendency to do is land with the feet more underneath them or closer to their center of mass, because it's a lot easier, go ahead and stand up, it's a lot easier for them to get through on the landing that way, okay? But as we gradually inch the feet out a little bit, not so much. Now stand up. It gets much more difficult, as you can see. Now, one of the things that, go ahead and sit back down. One of the things that, and just leave your feet there. If we can move the center of mass, as the heels get a little bit further out, if we can move the center of mass forward, it's a lot easier for the athlete to stand up. Now we just put 2 shots in her hand to facilitate that happening, but that obviously we're not going to run down the runway takeoff with shots in our hand. So what we've got to do is basically contribute force to the landing and make it a much more active one, and by doing that we're going to move the center of mass forward upon landing. So what we want to do first of all is just have the athlete get a sense of how progressively difficult it is to get through on the landing when the feet are further out. So Tiara, go ahead and stand up from there. No, right there. Okay, sit back down. Move your feet out a little bit farther. Stand up. Okay. You see, it's much more difficult, use your arms, much more difficult to stand up as the feet get further out to keep the center of mass, go ahead, keep the center of mass moving. So the way she's trying to help herself do that is by using her arms, driving her arms. It's very difficult really to do this from a stand to create this momentum, but as we add momentum from the takeoff, it becomes much easier. Okay, now go ahead and put your heels out. Arms here. Okay, now what we want to do is have the athlete drive the arms aggressively forward, thrust the hips forward, upon the heels hitting the sand, actually lift. Don't let the feet dig into the sand. As the heels touch the sand, we're going to lift the legs, and then our goal is to sit through, to have our tail get to where our feet have contacted the sand. The only way that's going to happen is if we aggressively drive the arms and thrust the hips forward.